welcome back. Bethesda Magazine ought to give me a stipend for the number of times I've promoted them today, and I'm going to quote them again in this segment. Bethesda Magazine reported this week that Montgomery County is facing a shortage of police officers while crime rates soar. The Montgomery County Police Force has been hit by retirement, departures from the force, and recruitment problems related to poor pay and a growing anti-police sentiment by local political leaders. Phil, many complained that low pay and morale is affecting the police force. The General Assembly last year passed legislation limiting the use of force, increasing the use of body cameras, but more importantly, it became the first state to repeal the so-called Police Bill of Rights. Is anti-policing sentiment the reason the county cannot recruit enough police officers?
I think that's part of it, but you have to remember what the confluence of events is happening here. You have the anti-police sentiment that you mentioned, and then at the same time, you have growth in government, which gives the police more and more to do. So on one hand, we're asking the police to do more, to enforce more and more laws that the government creates just because it has decided to. And then we're also telling the people who they're leaning on, oh, you're terrible, you're evil, and whatnot. So we need to do two things. First of all, we need to end this anti-police sentiment. Most of the officers there are doing their job. They want our communities to be safe, and they want to be safe within those communities. And we should respect that. And at the other side, we need to go to our politicians and say, you know what? The proliferation of laws is unacceptable, and stop asking for it ourselves. Because once we do that, they will be able to do their jobs, and they'll have a lot less to do.
Well, those are all good thoughts. And Sam, I want to go to you now. For background, the county generally holds 2 classes a year for recruits. And in January of 2017, there were, get this, 706 applicants, and of which 208 became officers. This year in January, it was down to 483 applicants. But the most shocking number is only 14 people, 14 recruits became officers. Why is this happening?
As Phil said, this is just, there are many, many issues that are really involved here. I was talking to a friend of mine today on the telephone who is a retired Washington, D.C. detective. When he first started on the force, which is in the 60s, or actually just early 70s, mid 70s, his starting salary was $8,500. And today, when you look at Montgomery County and other jurisdictions, they come in at around $55,000, $56,000. And when you add cost of current dollars and what it's worth, these guys are actually making less than they were before. And furthermore, the budgeting that goes into the police departments is also suffering. Our police, trying to do more, are working with less money, and therefore the departments have less to spend on all kinds of things, recruiting, higher pay, equipment, etc., to make the job more pleasant for them. Secondly, my hat goes off to anybody that wants to be a policeman. I don't know of anyone today whose wife would be absolutely enthralled about their husband becoming a policeman, going out the door every day and really being concerned about their safety on the job. I also think that police ought to be able to enforce the law, strictly enforce the law. And I think it's up to the courts also to enforce the law as well. Bringing a case, you bring a case. You can't say that stopping a traffic stop is less important than a domestic violence call. Because in those traffic stops, you find weapons, you find guns, you find people that may be more likely to break the law. I'm not talking about, targeting any people of color. I'm just talking about a general practice. The police don't feel welcome at their jobs. And this is not only true in Montgomery County, but the same thing is true in Fairfax County that we like to so much compare against. Fairfax County had 2 recruiting sessions. They're also understaffed, and both departments say the same thing. There's going to be more retirements in the future. They need more tools to recruit qualified officers, or we will have a problem in the future.
Well,
Sam,
I think real quick, Phil, we have about 30 seconds.
You bring up an interesting point. Why are we bothering people about having weapons You should be able to legally have guns, and that shouldn't be a problem. We should be focusing on things such as domestic violations and the like, as opposed to simply, hey, what are you doing? We've added more laws that you have to comply with, and we're going to pull you over. If I were an officer, I wouldn't want anything to do with that.
Well,
I agree. I think you're mixing apples with oranges here. It's two different things. If you're stopping somebody for a traffic violation and guns turn up, it's one thing. Directly to going and looking for guns is another. I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
well, we got to wrap it up, Karen. We will come back to this issue, as there are several interesting candidates running for state's attorney this year that have different philosophies about how we go about our policing here in Montgomery County in the future.